Well, we're here. I'm Bob Moats, welcoming you to X's and Joe's special edition, where we discuss and where we decode the winning formula in college basketball.
Yep, and I'm Mike Wiemuth, joining you for the first X's and Joe's live. I felt like I was about to do the Brett Musburger coming to you live, and Bob coming to you live from your porch. It seems that's a lovely view there in Columbus, Indiana.
You know, this is not the architectural tour that you see behind me, but what you do see is you see you see where the magic happens in the Moats household, the backyard. Anyway. Yeah, because we got the playground, and the basketball court's not in yet, but it will be in 3 years.
Oh, nice. Okay, adjustable rim, everything.
We're going full gorilla, and at this point, we're just negotiating width because I want a high school width.
Yeah,
with the length that would be kind of, I say 24 feet. Guys, give me your opinions on this at some point in time. 24, 25 feet. Yeah. But enough about my damn backyard. We're here for a reason.
Right. The 31st coach of all time has been hired.
So 31st, yeah, and maybe in this case, 5th time's a charm since Bob Knight, maybe. Or yeah, do we count like Jerry Oliver? Does he get counted?
Yeah, I think officially, as soon as you have a game under your belt, I think you're technically considered a coach.
Okay, so there was that one guy that did. Well, I guess the guy that did the sick day for Mike Davis too. Remember him?
Yeah,
that one guy that was president for a day. I don't remember
David Rice Atcherson. The
David Rice Atcherson. Yeah, the president for the day back before nuclear weapons. So it didn't really matter.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So Darian DeVries has been hired as IU's basketball coach. I'm sure unless you've been living under a rock in IU fan world, you know that, or you were just out camping and hiking the Appalachian Trail. You may have known that already because you would have heard the moaning from our friends in West Virginia, where he has his latest job for the last year. So anyway, we got we're going to kind of talk a little bit today about him. But first, speaking of our friends in West Virginia. Homefield Apparel has a wonderful collection, including West Virginia and I believe Drake as well, of apparel that you can get. So if you have a friend of yours that's a proud mountaineer, go ahead and send them a nice consolation prize of a T-shirt, hoodie, or hat from our friends at Homefield Apparel, who will definitely help them, kind of cope with their loss and wishing them the best of luck in their search for a new head coach. For what seems to be the 3rd year in a row.
Yeah, I think this is their 3rd search in 2 years, I guess.
Interim, DeVries, and this guy, and the new guy. Yes, so, exactly.
little busy.
Little busy over there, and I'm sure after reading the AD's comments, I'm sure they're not exactly happy.
Yeah.
So anyway, www.homefieldapparel.com for your shopping and for your apparel needs.
Yep.
So, Mike,
Bob.
I think I was probably like a lot of folks when this happened, and my first thought was, "Whoa, wait, what just happened here?" Because I think, and Galen and Scott or our friends Crimson and Cast do a great job talking about, how this hire. It's like it felt like there were some things that just didn't, guys coming, guys going, guys coming, guys going.
Yeah.
And I think part of it was this just felt like another one of those ball fake sort of things. Yeah. That it's DeVries' time in the hopper. Let's run the process out. Let's see him get his extension and move on. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, that smoke's not that's not black smoke. That's white smoke coming out of Assembly Hall. What?
Right.
What the hell just happened?
Yeah.
And you're like, DeVries? And our private conversations, we were thinking a Big 12 guy or McCollum, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we just weren't looking at that Big 12 guy.
Yes, exactly.
Why not, by the way?
Yeah.
As I look, again, I said I was going to take 48 hours. I think I lasted 12 at most. Maybe 4. But in reality, what do we miss on this guy?
You mean in terms of why we didn't pay attention to him, or
yeah, like why even we were like that?
Well, I think part of it is just that we're sort of following the media narrative, right? And
Right.
so if the media is saying here's the 7 or 8 candidates or the 12 candidates, and you're seeing on Twitter and on social media, well, this coach is starting to get smoked now. Well, then that's where your eyeballs are going to be like pointed towards. It's those guys that are getting all of the attention, and his name just never really came up. I mean, I think it came up just sort of sporadically. Maybe it's like, oh well, you know, there's some issues at West Virginia. Maybe they don't have NIL, and maybe he's like looking, but it was always kind of like in the other column, never anywhere towards even the option B level candidates that are out there. And you'll find if you look back on a lot of coaching searches, that tends to be how many hires go. I was looking back on the Louisville website last few days and looking at when did Kelsey's name come up in their conversation, and I can only find like one post anywhere within Louisville on their 24/7 site. They even mentioned his name before like 24 hours before he was announced. So it's kind of like, oh well, here's this, here's Kelsey. Yeah, he's down the South. He's doing pretty good, but yeah, he's again like way, way, way down the list. And then the day of, his name comes out, and that just again, that's where the avalanche started. But it's very typical that once you get, especially when the team season is over, once you get past the Ides of March, kind of like the March 15th, 16th zone, that's when you start to hear names, especially names that kind of come up late. Oftentimes, those are the horses that are coming sort of like off the corner and actually end up crossing the finish line. So, and he's just another one of those examples.
Well, and you could tell Dolson was vetting. I mean, we heard that, like, well, he was talking to Greg McDermott. Well, he's talking to Greg McDermott because he's asking about Greg McDermott's former assistant,
right,
Darian DeVries. Mm-hmm. So stuff starts falling into place as to why things are happening and when they were happening. But, Ryan, episode ago when we had Ryan on, he's telling us, look, this stuff happens fast. This stuff happens real fast.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, we're going to get into why I think I'm optimistic. I mean, caution. I mean, I think, and also why it's like, with our usual cautionaries of it's never all good or all bad. There's always some things to kind of what it's more like what we're looking for versus, oh boy, we're going to win a national championship in 3 years, book it sort of thing.
Right.
So that was kind of a thing that I looked at as we're looking at some of this.
Yeah.
Darren, thank you, thank you. Okay, Darren. Okay, boy, I feel like an idiot now. I go back to this. So Darren is Darren DeVries. All right.
Yeah. And that's how it's pronounced, Darren.
Okay, thank you.
Not Darian DeVries. It's Darian DeVries. Like
I'm terrible with names. But anyway, you go back and you look at we're looking at a world where I think the way I kind of described this to myself was we were looking for a moonshot, a Saturn V. We were looking at that, and this was very similar to what Kentucky went through last year with Nate Oates and others. This is, but you're in a world of space shuttles, and space shuttles are, can get you where you want to go. I look at the fact, and we talk about this a lot ourselves, but we're at the end of a great resignation of baby boomer coaches who are now getting out of the game.
Right.
And so you look even right now, this tournament, 5 out of the 8 coaches that are coaching in the 1 or a 2 seed are over the age of 60.
Right.
The old George Jones songs is who's going to fill their shoes.
Yeah.
We don't really need to know, at this point, we don't really know which one of these young guys coming up is going to be the guy that's going to fill George Jones, Waylon Jennings, and Willie Nelson.
Yeah.
And I think, you look at some of the indicators, and this is, we're getting the questions in the chat, which are great because they're asking you the question, is he hitting the marks?
Right.
And you and I kind of have had the kind of the faux disagreement of, does a tie push? I say a tie pushes. You say it's more complex. It's not. Believe me, our disagreements are much more nuanced than this one. But in this one, it's like, I mean, I think that he, I also just, West Virginia hired this guy to replace a Naismith Hall of Famer, probably their greatest coach they ever had in Bob Huggins.
Right.
Even though they had an interim year. No, I mean, this is the guy they thought, okay, we're going to use this guy to build on Huggy Bear's platform. Yeah. So there's that. But, we're going to get some of this in the chat too. He was pretty impressive while at Drake.
Very impressive at Drake. Yeah, the and Mark had asked this on the chat. Says, how many of Mike's check boxes does Coach DeVries check? And I'd say several of them in this particular instance, but especially when you look at his Drake numbers. We talked previously about my reference to the tendency of championship level coaches breaking the single season school win record at least one of their previous stops, and so that's a good it's kind of like a checkbox criteria that you can eliminate a lot of other coaches from. It's not so much like, hey, if you check that box, you're going to win a championship. It's more like, if you don't check that box, then the AD should not be looking at you, basically. But there's still some nuance within that. If you go and drill down on all the coaches that basically overachieved at their school, a second way of looking at it, sort of a drill down, is just how much more did they achieve at that school relative to where that school was at in terms of win-loss percentage. And one thing I tend to look at is like the 10, 20, and 50-year look backs on the program's, let's say, like annual total wins and win percentage. And you compare that number to like what the coaches, the incumbent coaches' win percentage at that school is, and see like what the difference is, what the variance is. And so DeVries, that's probably maybe the most impressive thing about him. His 10-year look back at Drake, the number of wins per year is 13.2 per year. So there are 13 wins average per year over the prior 10 years. DeVries had a average win rate of 25. So he's a full 11, almost nearly 12 wins above the rate of where Drake was in the prior 10 years. That's very rare. I mean, a double-digit improvement over a program's like 10-year trend line is really impressive. He's like double what the 50-year trend line was. They're 12 and a half wins average over the last like 50 or so years, and he's at 25, so he doubled that. You look at a lot of other coaches that like maybe didn't fare as well. Archie Miller, he won 23 games a year at Dayton. And of course, everyone looks at Archie and said, oh, this guy's winning a lot of games at Dayton. He was. The only issue is that he was winning at a time when Dayton was already winning a lot of games already. Right. Dayton's 10-year look back was 21.7 wins per year. So Archie was just like 1.4 wins above the trend line of where Dayton was. Same with Chris Holtman. I mean, Holtman was actually below the waterline. He was winning, I think, was a 23.3
right
in his time, and the 10-year trend line was 24.2. So he was like literally 0.9 below. And so you look at a lot of the great coaches out there in the history. Not only did they break like the single season like win record, but their like win percentage and their win totals were typically like just well above just like 2 or 3 games a year. Like the first coach I noticed this with was John Calipari. This is when I actually like kind of started looking at the statistic, because when he went from like UMass to Memphis and then like Memphis to Kentucky, I was thinking, well, like, how could you have known like what this guy was going to do? Like, is there anything that like kind of told us, okay, like, yeah, this guy's really going to be a real killer in the coaching circuit? And I looked at his UMass numbers, and like UMass was winning exactly around like 8 wins a year over the past 10 years before he got there. Calipari got them up to 24 wins a year. So literally plus 16 above the waterline of where UMass was. So that's just maybe if I just say like what's the most impressive thing numerically about DeVries in terms of like a predictive measures, that's it. Like he just was way above where Drake was
right
historically.
Well, and again, you're let's also go back even further. And Hoosier Daddy put up a great point that he has 6 of Drake's 8 20-win seasons in his history, and he was one away from being a 20-game winner at West Virginia after being decimated by injuries. Yeah, you can definitely say they should have been a tournament team. You know, you could definitely make that case. I would say that they to do what they did out of the Big 12 this year was pretty dang impressive.
Yeah,
and that's I mean, it's close. It's pretty much on par. Maybe. And again, if you had injuries at Louisville, Michigan, or Kentucky that were comparable to what happened at West Virginia, you could have seen those seasons turning into just barely missing the tournament versus where they were in wins. But then you go back to Drake. 3 out of 6 years he was there, he takes them to the NCAA tournament, and in the Valley, that's a 1-bid conference.
Totally, yeah.
You could argue that it shouldn't be. And I think Mike, Terre Haute, Indiana natives and fans, and as we're looking around, how much Terre Haute just seeps into the state of Indiana. It's the God's honest truth that you could argue, and rightfully so, that Indiana State was a tournament team last year. Right. But the Valley is a 1-bid conference, and you get there not through your regular season acumen, but you got to win the tournament. So not only is he winning regular season games, he's winning his tournaments half the time at Drake. Yeah. And then you go back another job. And this is another thing that we have to kind of bear in mind, that he wanted the Iowa job when they hired McCaffrey. Iowa said, we want you to have head coach experience. So he goes and he gets head coach experience. And he gets it at Drake, and then they hire him at West Virginia. And then when Iowa says, hey, we're ready for you now, then he goes, I can get a better job than you.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think he got a better job at Indiana. Here we were talking about Ben McCollum because of all the head coaching experience with D2 and that one, this year at Drake where he's doing really well. But now you've got a guy that has significant D1 experience as an assistant coach at Creighton. Mm-hmm. Almost 16, 17 seasons where he was under Altman.
16 seasons, yeah.
Altman and McDermott.
Yeah.
He helps them usher into going from, I think weren't they a Valley school also, or they were
at one time they were. Yeah. I used to watch them at the Holman Center. Yeah.
Valley, and then they moved into the Big East. So he helped them make the jump from that mid-major 1-bid type of program to a multi-bid power conference in basketball where and he got him in one of the mansions. I mean, he wasn't like he's in a shanty town down there. When you talk about Holtman was in a mansion too, but he was on his way out. He knew what the writing on the wall was. Same with his time at Xavier too. It's like, those were a couple things there where he kind of pulled that. But okay. Let's see if I can actually get this up because I've never had to do this.
I got it.
Okay, you got it. Thank you. Yes, that with our acumen in the conference in the Big Ten tournament is something that's pretty impressive to say the least. A futility. So having someone that can do, so he's shown that he can win at this level. But I think that when you look at past results on Darian DeVries, we have someone who can actually. I don't know. It's okay. I think it's being cautiously optimistic. And again, I'm going to go through. Remember, 2/3 of our coaches in college basketball right now in Division I are 4 years or less.
Yeah,
Darian DeVries is now back on that list. He goes to the reset button.
Right.
So that tells you a thing or two. But it's like if he's doing what he's doing, and let's talk a little bit about the recruiting, Mike. Mm-hmm. If he's doing what he's doing now, West Virginia is not exactly known as an NIL player compensation haven.
No, it's
I thought I saw yesterday when Norlander saying we're gonna have $7 million in player compensation. That's got to put us at the tip of the iceberg.
I would say that may not be the ceiling.
I don't think so either.
I think there's a decent chance it's going to be more, but we'll see. But yeah, I mean, it's going to
a hell of a lot of money.
You're going to have more than even what you probably had this last year. And this last year, obviously, you had like at least top 10 kind of money in terms of like NIL. But yeah, and this is another thing about where you're looking at what are you looking for in a coach if you're trying to get a guy that can come in and sort of like turn things around. Not just obviously the performance on the court, but like recruiting. That there's the relativity measures in recruiting as well. You look at West Virginia, the last few years, last few cycles, they really were kind of in the doghouse in terms of landing decent recruits. You have to really go back to like the Oscar Toshibwe and Jalen Bridges class when they actually had like, more than let's say 2 4-star recruits, in their coming class. Mm-hmm. DeVries got that this last year in his first cycle, his first year right out of the boat. He lands 3 really good players, especially like one, I really, really like. We got Braden Hawthorne, Kelvin Odie, and Trent McClain. IU fans might remember Trent McClain. His dad was Don McClain, who played for UCLA. And I swear to God, that kid is almost a mirror image of his dad in terms of playing style.
His dad was and I want to be clear, his dad was one hell of a player. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was like all Pac-12, first team.
He and Tracy Murray, that was the team. And they talked about how IU blew him out in that Elite 8 game. But they got the 1 seed to IU's 2 seed in 92 because they blew IU out in the Naismith Classic in November.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was a Bullets player with Tom Gugliotta. Yeah, so he played on the Bullets for a few years, played in the NBA. That guy, he's solid. That's a strong player. And so, yeah, but not only that, but he's a West Coast guy going to what I would say was going like you're going from like oh geez, California Dreaming, The Doors, Gin and Juice, West Coast to Take Me Home Country Roads.
John Denver, yeah.
I mean, yeah, you're going to John Denver.
Yeah. Yeah, well, but both Odie and McClain, they are both from SoCal Academy, so they're actually teammates. And so
yeah,
they were not easy kids to attract. Odie is the kid I really, really like. He was recruited by like Texas A&M, Marquette, Rutgers, Missouri. So you can tell just by the people who's being giving him offers and who was after him. He's very aggressive on defense, very long athlete, and just kind of like an absolute bulldog on defense. And besides, my complaint of recent IU rosters lacking shooters and attackers, the other thing is guys that are more in that like small forward, like 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", 6'7" range, who actually have athleticism and can jump and defend extremely well.
Get that one up there.
Which
Todd
one?
Tanashar, you make it the Cupid doll. That's prime. That's primo.
Yeah, that is.
Many of you others were loving the comments. This is a lot of fun for us. I'll say that much.
We've got some good ones coming in.
So let's quickly, because I want to go back to the LK's comment about, and there's a couple more I want to kind of go to here with the amount of NLI money coming through. How patient will big donors be, and the idea of a tear down year. I'm not sure. Like, it's going to take us a moment to kind of figure out. Like, and this is something we're going to watch in the next couple of weeks because we're going into the portal recruiting. IU's going to have an edge up because they're going to have their head guy in, probably assistants in. They're already working to get. They've already got people working behind the scenes for dudes,
and I think that's been going on for a long.
It's been going on. Like, hey, keep us in mind before you go commit to Southwest Nebraska Teachers and Barbers College. Keep us in mind. We might have an offer for you. Yeah. But I think the question is, Coach DeVries is going to come in here, look at who he's going to want to keep, who he's going to be like, it's okay for you to go in the portal. Versus I want you to give us a chance. I think a lot of the guys, if you're still looking at making the money that they're talking about playing at Indiana, I think that, being a part of something like this they may, it's a compelling case, I think, in many results. Right now, it's Gabe Cupps and Malik Renew. We know that Bryson Tucker is not in the portal currently.
Yeah.
We know that Malik Renew is not in the portal. Mackenzie Mbaka is not in the portal currently.
Yeah.
But we also know there's at least going to be 5 spots that they're going to fill.
Right.
2 of them and really 3. And that's assuming everybody just decides to come back, and that's not going to happen. So we could be looking at half the guys on current commitments and current players here, and another half where they go get them. I think it's also important to keep in mind that this is a game where or a situation where you're looking at when you look at recruiting. Coach DeVries, I mean, his last game at Drake was against Washington State with Miles Rice.
Right.
And statistically, they neutralized him, but Rice still had a pretty good game, just making plays happen. So he saw Miles Rice as a defender. He scouted him. He sees these, so he, I can see where he can definitely look at some of these players that's played against that he can kind of just be like, here's how I can make your game better.
Right.
And for a kid like Miles Rice, this is a system that really, he runs a point guard driven system where he gives point guards a lot of space. And we'll get to that later, obviously, but I wanted to kind of just say, what are we looking at on our team right now?
Right. And I think, I think the speed of getting up to snuff is a really interesting question, because fair or not, this hire is going to be compared against, let's say, the market peers. It's going to be compared against Kelsey at Louisville. It's going to be compared especially with what Dusty May is doing at Michigan.
And Mark Pope. I think those are the 2. Yeah. Huge.
Yeah. And I think even right after Michigan won the Big Ten title, I think I posted something on Twitter like that. Now the optics game really gets more pressurized for this IU hire with one of their alumni, a guy whether you buy into the narrative or not that he was possibly open to IU, his name is always going to circle back around and be compared against whoever was going to get hired into this spot. Well, he's not doing what Dusty May could do. He's not up to whatever win total Dusty is at 25 plus wins. So fair or not, that's just going to be where the standard is. The good thing about DeVries is that he has shown a tendency to get things going pretty quickly. I mean, he's plus 10 wins above where he picked up the ball when he arrived in West Virginia. He's at 19 wins. Last year, West Virginia had 9 wins.
And he started the year on fire because he had the guys to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Before his son got injured, he was. Well, remember the funny thing, and talk about like worlds of coincidence here. The game that probably kind of started the avalanche for Mike Woodson and his departure, was at the Atlantis game against Louisville. That was game 1 of the series. Do you remember what game 2 was right afterwards?
Gonzaga
and West Virginia. And West Virginia won that game.
They beat them 86-78 in overtime in a 77 possession game.
Yep.
And at that point, they were ranked 71st in KenPom.
Yeah. And Gonzaga was 3rd in the country, I think, in terms of like AP poll at the time. So
they also lost. They also when they lost to Louisville, they lost to them in an overtime game as well.
Right. Yeah.
So there's that as a possibility that, when you start thinking about this, that this past season, they got the talent to be able to compete, not just in high major conferences, but they also got him to compete in a situation where he got him up to speed really quick. And again, I think that impressed a lot of people inside college basketball at the time.
Yeah. And it's tough, it's, if you think about the reaction to him, and obviously, when you and I were discussing this previously, He's not my first pick. He's probably not even, the top 5 picks that I had. You think about all the chafing I get from people about how much I was hoping that Scott Drew would be the choice. Still, but yeah, and so I obviously think that sometimes when a new hire happens, typically what will occur is the guy will be judged not for who he is, but for who he isn't. Well, he's not Scott Drew. Well, he's not TJ Otzelberger. And I think that's totally fair. And my policy is I never get into mood policing of the fan base. The fan base is absolutely allowed to have their own thoughts, opinions about a new coach. And part of a coach coming in is that you actually have to come in and prove something. You actually have to achieve something. And so I think taking a bit of sort of a caution in terms of not declaring this guy to be the savior until he actually does things that prove that, quote unquote, he's a savior or even a good coach. I think it's a healthy way to kind of go about it, because I've noticed so often, and not just at IU, but other places, is that there's a tendency to declare someone like the Matrix. They are the one. They will deliver us out of bondage and into the sunny uplands of history. And that's not always the case. You just have to actually just observe things as they happen and be objective about, what they are achieving, what they're not achieving.
I think when we start talking, we're looking at this from, optimism is different than irrational exuberance.
Right.
And I remember 8 years ago at this very time, we were ecstatic over Archie Miller, jumping up and down, cheering.
Well, because I don't think I was jumping up and down, but I thought he was.
Oh yeah. Oh, come on. Now you and I both knew that there was one guy that we wanted to see under the Christmas tree that morning. It was Archie Miller.
At the beginning of the search? Or?
Yes. Yeah. At the beginning of the search, when we started talking about who would be a great fit for Indiana.
Yeah.
8 years ago, Archie Miller to replace Tom Crean seemed like the guy, because everybody he was on the wish list of every single athletic director.
He was at the top of it was the young guy whose turn it was to go to the big leagues.
And I mean, I was even ecstatic when Tom Crean was hired, because I thought, that's offensive-minded guy. What he did at Marquette was very impressive. I mean, they hadn't had really anybody that had any success there since Al McGuire. He then he showed he had some success at IU, not as much as I think was expected. But at this moment, again, you're going to have to look forward on this. I'm glad that you and I aren't going, man, we got the Saturn V. We're going to the moon tomorrow. Yeah. When in reality, we could still go to the moon with what we have here, us and probably 25 other programs right now. Because as we've said, you look at the very top in our last episode, the very top, you have 5 very elite programs at plus 30 efficiency margin. And then you have a massive pile of above average. And a lot of those coaches in that massive pile of above average are younger coaches who are trying to figure out all the stuff that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So you can be excited.
Yeah.
You can be intrigued. Watch what's coming next, though. That, I think, we're not going to say. And again, when Archie Miller walked into his press conference, we had a member of the media, we're going to remain nameless, who writes for a large newspaper, whose name's not Zach Osterman, stand up and cheer and say, thank you for saving IU basketball. We're not going to go there. We're not going to do that.
Yeah.
I don't think we should do that at all. You should never do that to begin with. But if this guy walks in the press room and he starts getting garlands thrown at his feet, no, it's not happening right now. You got to go take Aqaba before you get your garlands. You got to go across the damn desert without water on the anvil for 40 flipping days before you get your garlands. Then, if you're right about where the guns are pointed, you get it. If you know what I'm talking about with Lawrence of Arabia, that's what I'm talking about. It's like you're talking about doing the impossible. So go do the impossible. But until you do it, I see I love the sentiment in the chat. Debate this, guys.
Yeah.
Debate this, because it's fine. And this is the fun part of it, because Right now, it's a question of how do we set ourselves to kind of go from there.
Yeah. This is not Pyongyang. People are allowed to have, divergent opinions about, the leader of their of their sports teams. Yeah.
And we're not all sunshine pumpers and, no, it's like, we know it's coming. It's like, there's a 1 in 4 chance of this thing working. And any coaching hire right now, I think you had a 1 in 4 shot.
Yeah, exactly. But, over time, one of those 4 will come up.
Yeah. So,
And then the good thing, one thing I'll say, and we talked previously about my theory of opposites, which is, just the idea that typically athletic directors try to hire coaches that are generally the opposite of the guy they just fired, in terms of their strengths and weaknesses and all that. I will say that's one thing that maybe stands out with DeVries is that I think he's the type that is very winning focused in a way where I cannot imagine him missing the NCAA tournament, having like a 50+ Ken Palm drop from like 1 year to the next, and at the end of it saying, I did my job.
No.
Can't guarantee things, but I think there's a very, very low probability that kind of sentiment would take place. So
you would definitely see different type of white smoke coming out of Assembly Hall.
Yeah,
It'd be burning. Something would be burning to the ground, and that's how most coaches are. Honestly, when you have bad years, it's like I want to burn it. I mean, you have to process through what you have to get through it's stages of grief, and the anger stage is pretty. There are a couple of videos we may be able to put them on the show notes, but I may put them on Twitch Space. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'll. I'm not sure. There are some videos of him actually coaching.
Yeah,
and it's intense. I think Mike Woodson's was intense too, just in a different direction. But this is an intensity where it's like it's intense on the process, it's intense on what's happening, and that was something that. And this is the system and style he likes is not married to it. Detrimental results. Tony Stuckey just put up a great comment with this. So it's a good segue for us to kind of do the last thing here. I watched some video. We looked at some of the analytics. Okay, we know. Well, he plays slow, shoots a lot of threes.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at Ken Palm, you can make that quick hit. But when you kind of dig in a little deeper and you start talking about, well, does he actually play slow? When you talk about transition baskets, he actually does. He's pretty much in the middle of the country when he's actually looking at running. So when you start talking about getting out in transition, well, he runs. So he actually gets those. He kind of gets those looks earlier than a lot of he's in the middle, which is kind of where you want to be in transition. You're not running too fast, you're not running too slow.
Right.
I think a lot of it when I was watching last night was interesting, and I watched a little bit of the Kansas game this year when he was without a couple of his dudes.
Yeah.
Finding that he didn't go through the post a whole lot this year. 5% of the time they were getting a shot look out of the post.
His five rarely goes
mobile.
Yeah,
it's mobile.
He's
a 5 out.
Yeah, the 5 is usually between the free throw line and the top of the 3-point line, setting ball screens, and then he's flashing down the post, on.
And so what you're also seeing is, and again, you can say, well, IU did some of that too. Yeah, they did. And that was some of their best stuff. But what they're also doing differently is they're breaking up the help, and they're using a lot of softening movement. So one reason why his pace seems to be off a little bit or slower than some teams, he ran a pretty heavy amount of softening, and going into striking actions. So one of the frustrations when you saw Mike Woodson this year was that, and the last couple, where it's just he takes, the guard goes, straight into the straight into the lane.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going into Miles Rice has no space to maneuver. He's bunting into bodies. You don't see that with DeVries because what they're doing is they're running different cuts. They're doing some J right interchanges. Yeah. There was one where I saw them against Kansas where they actually ran, so they had ball screen action. It didn't work, and then they had a stagger screen coming off of it as well.
Right.
Or then you watch some of the stuff with Drake, like you watch him play Washington State, watch them play a little bit of that, from their tournament game. Also watch a little because they also played Miami right before IU played Miami in IU's last tournament appearance, and they played Miami, I think, harder and better than IU did. They definitely defensively took care of them.
Yeah,
But
they kind of wore out at the end, but they
wore out,
yeah.
but they really gave him a lot of trouble, and really was they really kind of pressured. But I think a lot of it, you're going to see more movement in offense. You're going to see actual cuts, not just like one-step ducks and dives off of actions. Like we saw with Balo a lot this year. You're going to see different offense. I think offense that we're going to find, a lot of us as IU fans are going to find aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
And defensively, I've heard people, well, he's a pack line guy. Not the same as Tony Bennett, not the same as the Wisconsin three, the triumphant from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Not like Archie Miller.
Yeah.
His pack line, I think a lot of his ideas is he's big on ball pressure.
Yeah.
He pressures the hell out of a basketball. And you're going to find
his five. Yeah. When other teams do ball screens, they're hedging hard and they're trying to like create a turnover. They're having their big is constantly like pressuring and then dropping back, pressuring and dropping,
which is allowing them to go under the screens to cut off the penetration. And then they'll also switch them too. They will switch ball screens. And I think a lot of it, he does give you the option. He gives his defenders the option of basically saying, I'm going over, I'm going under, switch. So his people communicate, and he practices communication in his practices. The little I could find so far, you're hearing him emphasize repeatedly, communicate, and communication of substance, which one of the frustrating things when you watched IU play at times, really over the last 8 years, and especially defensively the last 20, you saw a team that doesn't communicate well, a team that really just doesn't seem to have an identity defensively or offensively. I think you're going to have an identity defensively and offensively with DeVries and his, and how he's going to play defense, which is going to be flexible, but at the same time, it's going to be hard-nosed, edgy, going to be getting, really just attacking a basketball, which you're not. You're not kind of there.
Yeah, I noticed that he really tries to pressure passing lanes more, like taking some risk there, even if necessary. So you try to create islands a lot of times for the ball handlers. Like, okay, you're going to beat me, but you're not passing off to your buddy. This is a one-on-one, between us.
But the way he pressures them is he doesn't do it like you traditionally see them. You traditionally see it where you're basically getting in or you're getting above. He's doing it in a way where he's actually taking away the angles going from the basket. Like he's taking that angle away differently. And when he gets to a lot of these steals and a lot of these turnovers, a lot of it because the pass is just bad because they're not used to making a pass of that angle. Yeah, he creates passing angles that are hard to complete.
Yeah. I noticed that in the Gonzaga game, few started pushing his offense towards the corners.
Yeah.
It's like a lot, like some of the scoring that they actually did was like, basically corner threes or corner and basically driving the end line, because that's basically what was kind of open. So I think he's trying to create as much pressure in and around like the middle of the court and just forcing the ball like laterally as much as possible.
Which is ultimately what you want to do in any sort of really defensively. What you want to do is you want to try and push the ball into the corners and then defend the corner three or stuff. You don't want to get beat on. You don't want to get beat on your closeouts from there either. The other thing is they close out extremely well.
Yeah,
like they're in movement when they're in movement when the ball's in the air. And I also notice, like I said, they switch. They'll employ peel switching. They have really good switching protocols because they communicate.
Right.
Something Brian Tonsoni brings out a great deal. And I'm hoping there's more emphasis on not letting guys blow by us for easy layups every possession. I have a sneaking suspicion that is not going to be a problem under Darian DeVries. Yeah. I have a feeling that guys that do that aren't going to be playing very long. Just in what we've seen, there was nothing easy going into the lane. I'll put it that way. And if it was because someone made a mistake, and sometimes those happen. Yeah. So I feel better about where this team's going to be defensively, but it's like they really do. When you start talking about that communication element, when you start talking about I was going to say what Coach Tonsoni brings up. Watch guys, are they in their stance on help side? Mm-hmm. His teams are in stance on their help side, so they're locked in, they're engaged. It's going to be a little. I think you're going to see some differences
Yeah.
Now,
well, you think about it, yeah. I mean, like again, getting back to the theory of opposites. I mean, just in terms of like strategy, this is very different from what people were used to under Woody. Especially that there will not be any buddy ball going on with DeVries because he absolutely wants the lane unclogged because he's trying to move things laterally as much as possible, try to stretch the floor. And the bigs are used completely differently than what you may have been used to the last 4 years.
and LK just put up a great question, which is serious question. How much of the blame of the season we put on Woodson's assistants? And that's always a good question of how much ultimately you're responsible for your team. But I agree that it's just if DeVries brings in the right assistant pool, you need recruiters, but you also need guys who are going to give good scouts. I will say when you watch his teams though, LK and others, they follow the scout incredibly well. They know, like they're like, okay, this is a guy. We want this guy shooting from these spots.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely something where it's not we do what we do. It's we're going to make them do what they don't want to do.
Yeah.
And that's I think when you start talking about kind of the strategic and the tactical elements of the game, he does that with his opponents. So I think the day-to-day guys that he brings in are going to be important. Like right now, and here's another thing we missed. Corey Barnett was on his staff. I didn't realize that till yesterday. It's like, wait a minute, this guy's an IU. He's an IU former IU player.
Yeah.
Tom Ostrom, hey, he knows his way around Assembly Hall. We saw a whole bunch of people that were affiliated with this guy in this program. That's like, wait a minute, this makes. I just looked at their site. I'm like, maybe we should look at this guy a little closer. It's like it all makes sense.
You notice that Chester Frazier is one of their chief recruiters.
Notice that too. Yeah. And I'm okay if we want to bring an Illinois guy in. As far as I'm concerned, let's
go.
Well,
Chester's a really good recruiter these days, and he's like, he's definitely an up and comer in the recruiting world. So he would definitely be an asset if he did.
Give that man a raise. Let's go.
Another thing, we're kind of missing, or we're talking about one DeVries at length. Probably should talk about the younger guy.
We're gonna love this kid.
Oh,
we're gonna love this kid.
What was my text to you last night? Is that some of the oldsters are going to absolutely soil their pants when DeVries comes around.
You don't even have to be old.
The first game he has like 7 or 8 3-point makes is going to really excite the fan base.
We're gonna love this kid. And there's I think we're gonna love that kid a lot. And I think was it you that asked, does he have more kids when we hired him?
I think my first question when the news came down was like precisely how many more children does Darian DeVries have, and how many of them are sons?
And how many of them are sons? Yeah, and what's their height? What's their weight?
Well, if you look at his numbers. So DeVries, Tucker DeVries, he's at 116. This is just from like last year, 116 offensive rating, 10.1 box plus minus. Bob, do you remember the last time IU had a non-big that was 10 plus on BPM?
Eric Gordon, maybe.
Close. It was Victor Oladipo in 2013.
Okay. Well, I was just off by if I'm playing Price is Right, I might win.
12 years though, and now you're getting a 10 plus BPM non-big to likely come onto the roster. He was 47% on threes last year on 7 attempts per game, and in the win against Arizona that West Virginia had, he was 8 for 12 versus the Wildcats from deep. So that's it's one thing to have those kind of games against your preseason
right.
Lower tier Ken Palm 200 plus teams, but to do it against Arizona is quite impressive.
True. And it's just you're seeing a kid that was, I think he was Valley Player of the Year last year. We're not sure. Someone asked, I think IU grad Mark, how serious is his injury? It was serious enough to end his season this year. Do you know the specific of the injury? He
had a right shoulder injury coming out of Drake, and then his left shoulder, I think, had a problem.
Okay.
So maybe leaving it out. in terms of his.
Well, as you know, I'll be 50
recovery.
fairly soon. I've learned that everybody has shoulder problems at some point in their life, but I'm not going to minimize it because, at the same time, we'll see. But yeah, again, you still, if you can do that with if you can do it with Tucker DeVries, a kid like, Trent Sisley may find himself in a position where it's going to be interesting to see again where this thing goes and the next few weeks with the portal. Who comes? Does he get the McLean kid, the OA kid? Does he get these kids coming in? There's going to be a lot of questions at this point, like what kind of watching these moves over the next 30 days.
Yeah,
and seeing, and we'll obviously be talking about this. Someone asked a question about video. Someone had to work today. I did it because I'm on break. I'm on vacation. Yeah. But he had to work today. But I guarantee you, a good friend of ours, Coach Tony Adrano, will be doing is already pouring through video.
Yeah,
like it's going out of style.
Yeah,
to show you kind of a little bit what I was trying to tell you here. He'll do a much better job of explaining it and demonstrating it than what I will. But I will say that that to me is, we're going to see a lot of video breakdowns and a lot of conversations as to kind of where this thing goes over the next few weeks. What I will say, someone asked about the press conference. I'm sure it's going to be either on YouTube or through IU. I would look at IU Athletics. Mm-hmm. I'd also say I'm just going to give everyone a cautionary word of advice. Don't listen to the press conference.
Right.
Take it seriously. They're going to say all sorts of crap. Everyone's going to says crap at the press conference. When's the last time we heard an introductory press conference that actually impressed us?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is,
did ever Dean have a press conference? Because I'm sure. I mean, was it recorded by anything? Did they put that on a wax cylinder or something? Because that might have been the last one we had that really impressed me.
I'm sure they put the loudspeaker on the Conestoga wagon back then. Yeah. No, you can. I enjoy looking at the press conferences of the worst hires. Go look at the Stallings press conference when he was hired at Pitt. That even they were able to make that one sound reasonably happy and upbeat. So I'm really right there with you, Bob. The press conference. It's more like, is there some theme that comes out of it? But most of the theme is going to be the same. I always like to see, are they going to mention championships? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Because sometimes that's always the thing, is you think about any coach, and this is always the pattern I've noticed. They'll mention championships in the press conference. And if the coach is still winning at a championship level, they'll continue to mention championships within the program. But if they get into a year 2 or 3, championships? What are these championships you speak of? They kind of pretend and wish they had said something different during the press conference. So yeah, things like that are kind of sort of interesting. But yeah, for the most part, you're not going to glean anything of great interest or use from the press conference. It's just more a celebration. Hey, here's the guy, here's his family, and wishing him the best of luck.
Light a cigar. Yeah. Have a drink.
Well, what kind you got there?
That is a Romeo and Juliet at 1875, and one of your personal favorites.
Yeah, exactly. R&Js are my favorite.
R&Js are, yes. I didn't really want to go through a full CAO flathead today.
Okay.
And although I might, at some point, Beth's going to be back home.
Yeah.
But I think at this point, celebrate how you want to. No one's going to tell you how to fan.
So at least not we won't. At least we won't in this.
True. No, our thing, and really a lot of it is, I just think that at this point, being a little cautiously optimistic will be is kind of fun.
Yeah.
I'll go back to Ryan hit the nail on the head on this earlier. You got to go forward. You can't look back.
Yeah.
And I get that. I agree with that sentiment 110%. I also think at this point in time, it's also a thing where we're at that age where we were talking about the 92 game like it was yesterday, and we were both in high school, right, Mike?
Right.
We want this thing back.
Yeah.
And right now it's a question of, well, how long do we give him? I see it in the chat, and it's a hell of a question. I'm not going to answer the hypothetical at this point because I don't know how long you give him. Yeah. I think I do agree with the idea of when you know. And the question becomes, I don't think you get 3 years to rebuild this damn thing. I think we're looking at making an investment that means win now.
Yeah.
And you fired a guy that had the same number of wins as DeVries had at West Virginia. So keep that in mind too. So if you're looking at the sort of cautionary, in spite of the injuries, in spite of the situations, you still have that. So this is not a situation where I think Indiana University is going, well, we need to go through a full Tom Crean type rebuilding over 3 seasons and maybe we get us back.
Yeah.
It's win now.
Yeah. Especially in the NIL,
I 1,000% agree.
Yeah.
I 1,000%. We want the same experience that we had when we were kids too. That's what I want for my son.
Yeah. And for like all ages. I mean, I know plenty of IU fans, and we hear from them. It's like, look, I'm 70. I want to see another championship, or I want to see like championship level play again. So and I think that you always have to kind of keep that in mind. And I think Dolson definitely is an AD that seems to be much more aligned with that mentality maybe than some other ADs in the past, which is helpful. But you definitely need to start like thinking about like getting this thing on track, because that you don't lose fans per se, they just tune out.
Yeah.
And the longer you stay in a kind of state of
purgatory.
Yeah, kind of like not awful, but not great either. We're just kind of make the tournament here and there, I mean, like that's not going to keep people interested. It'll keep like, you'll always have a baseline of fan support, but that baseline can be kind of low even for a program, with a lot of resources. But that being said, to really get things kind of turned back on and getting fans sort of like reinvested, you need to get back up to 25, 26, 27 wins pretty quickly and beyond at some point to get things really rolling the way we all hope it will.
This is a top 5% program. This is supposed to be a top 5% program. So that means
and it has top 2% resources in some places.
Well, and when you're a top 5% program, part of the expectation is you pop into that top 2% frequently.
Yeah,
you may very once in a while drop into that into that next 3, the top level of it. But I'm going to say it right now: go knock Purdue or Michigan State off of that perch. Just go get them. Go take them off, because at this point, I mean, someone's got to fall. And if you're gonna get a spot, you got to go earn it. And you got to and if there's one thing you say about DeVries, he's a grinder. He's hungry. He wants to do that. That's why he went to West Virginia, was to do that out of the Big 12. It's not like he's backing off of a challenge. So that's something to be optimistic on.
Yep.
So we'll have more later, guys. We want to thank you guys for tuning in to us on short notice on 10 a.m. on a
work day.
Is it Wednesday? Is it really Wednesday?
It is Wednesday. Okay. And Bob, you're going down to Lexington, is that right, for the tournament?
24 hours from now, I will be en route to Lexington, Kentucky to see Creighton play Louisville. Yeah. So, there'll be some interesting things there. I'm going to see a lot of good offense, and then watch Auburn just run up. More than likely, we'll be running up a 30-point lead in the first half.
Yeah, awesome. Well, say hi to Paulie for me.
Yeah, you're going to Nashville.
Yeah, meet up with
our good friend Paul Miller for you, and you're.
I'm going to meet up with a lot of my high school buddies. Previous guest Bo Haynes, Bo will be there with me and with me and my friends. That we're kind of an eclectic group in terms of like our fandom. I mean, we have Ball State, Purdue, Rose-Hulman, Yale, Michigan, IU, alums at this thing. So it's it's always fun, and this is kind of like our annual get together. So we'll be hanging out in Nashville and watching the games, and hopefully having some fun down there.
Send Bo my best as well, and have a great trip. And I'm sure we'll be texting back and forth here and there throughout the weekend. I'll send. We'll send pics. Maybe I'll post a few for you all too. All right, y'all have a wonderful rest of your day. Go Hoosiers!
Yep. Thanks, and remember to tune in all of the great content on the Back Home Network. And have a great tournament, everybody. Take care.
And thanks to Bob, and thanks to John. Have a great day.